I must apologize. I won't be able to answer this last question about the WHO. It is true that it's a very complex negotiation that's taking place at the WHO about the health matters that she's raising, which also relate to intellectual property rights with regard to drugs and vaccines. I mentioned that we have a South Center whose board currently I'm the chairperson. The matter that you are raising is in fact on the agenda of the South Center because there are many elements. It's a very detailed question, this one. The agreements that the WHO needs to have impacting on health in the various instances that you've mentioned. So I'm saying that I apologize, really, I wouldn't be able to deal with that. It's a very detailed question. A lot of it requires doctors and people like that to look at the specifics in order to be able to construct this global agreement that is required. There's an ongoing process. If I have your email, I could send you some of the material that's coming out of the South Center on these matters. The question that was raised about an African ideology. We said, I'm talking now as the ANC, we said we are fighting for the victory of the National Democratic Revolution. Now, I've seen a lot of discussion about this, with some people like these ones who were at the Moonshot Pact, saying that this comes from Moscow, this NDR. It's some ideology which is, I don't know what. Colleagues, NDR stands for National Democratic Revolution. It arises in this context that many countries in Africa and elsewhere had to fight for liberation from colonial oppression, as a result of which they get national liberation. That's what the N stands for, nothing to do with Moscow. It's national liberation from colonial oppression. Here we're fighting from national liberation from apartheid oppression, which is colonial oppression. Then there's the D. The D stands for democratic. You could have, you fight for a national liberation struggle. You succeed. You defeat the colonialists. So in that sense, the national liberation has been achieved. But here comes a Thabo Mbeki, who's carrying a gun, impose himself on you as a dictator. So the D is missing. So people who are engaged in our kind of struggle said, we need national liberation to be replaced by a democratic system. And together these constitute a revolution. And that's absolutely all. National liberation, democracy. That's what NDR stands for. A lot of theorizing from these people about an importation from Moscow, and they cook up all sorts of things. And my view has been for many years that this is what should unite all of the countries on our continent. You look from the top to bottom. a realization of the objectives of a national democratic revolution. The Algerians need that in the same way as the South Africans need that. When the old man Kabila was still there, still alive, we talked to him and said to him, our view is, you are a Lumumbist. He was a part of the leadership under Patrice Lumumba, old man Laurent Kabila. We said that our own view is that the Lumumbists must come together. This is after they had removed Mobutu Sese Seko. The Lumumbists must come together because what happened with the assassination of Patrice Lumumba was the disruption of this national democratic revolution. We must go back to the national democratic revolution in the Congo to deal with the challenges of national liberation from Belgium and the establishment of a democratic state. The old man Kabila said we were wrong. And the reason we're wrong in saying that to him is because he said he's the only Lumumbist left. So there were no other Lumumbists to bring together. But that is what I think is the challenge that faces the continent as a whole, is the realization of the national democratic revolution in all our countries. And so I'm saying you will find somebody in one of the Francophone countries who gives me a business card. On one side, it's got his name, the minister, and his address, contact numbers in his country, on this side. On this side, it's his name, minister, contact addresses in Paris. What does that signify? That's part of the national liberation. And you need this democratic part also. So you don't have these military people who want to come and govern and all of that. It's in that context then these other matters arise about national unity, national integration, African unity, integration, African Renaissance, and all of that. Ideologically, the framework is the national democratic revolution. And there's a great weakness with regard to that. You don't have, on the continent, there are very few parties of the national democratic revolution that sincerely, genuinely believe in that, and therefore will fight for the realization of these national democratic goals. And that is part of our problem here. Part of the negatives that come from the ANC is exactly this: failure to have close attachment to the goals of a national democratic revolution. When we talk to the US government, remember we are an NGO, but fortunately some of them, even in the leadership of the US, will still listen to us. We say to them that the African continent has got a great wealth of policy positions about itself. As a continent, we've got the policy on democracy. We've got policy on the gender question. We've got a policy on children, on the economy, on peace and security, anything and everything. So the continent does not need to be educated by anybody at all about its own future. Yeah. So we say to the Americans, therefore, that if they want Africa to have a positive approach towards the United States, all the United States needs to do is to support Africa on each of these policy positions, whether it's about democracy or the economy or whatever, that the continent would indeed appreciate that support, so that you do not have a United States which comes to Africa to tell the African continent what to do, but to come to the continent in support of the positions that the African continent has taken. Now, I'm saying that we're an NGO, and that's what we say. I don't know what the government say when they talk to the United States, but that would be my advice to the government also. When you talk to them, tell them. They don't come here to instruct us about anything. They come to support what we as a continent have decided.